What's going on, guys? It's AG here. Today we're going to be tier list power ranking the SEC conference going in the next season. So the categories we have are favorites. Okay, so that's who I think is the absolute favorite. So the two teams that are the favorite as of right now to make the SEC championship. Then we've got contenders. So any team I think has a legitimate shot to make the SEC championship but isn't quite favorite, a standout to me. Then we've got, so you're telling me there's a chance. So what that means is they're not quite contender, but if all falls right, if they win a game or two they're not supposed to win, they could instantly bump into contender status. Then we've got better luck next year. That means better luck next year. You don't really got a shot here to make the SEC championship, so better luck next year. Now with the SEC, I will go ahead and say there's a lot of contenders in here that I think there's probably 5 teams that are going to make the college football playoff. And with how the schedules work, I'm not entirely sure how the tiebreakers are going to end up playing out because a lot of these teams don't play each other. So I think there's going to be a ton of teams that have one loss in conference play that haven't played another team with one loss. So how's that tiebreaker going to work? Well, we'll find out soon enough. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. These are in alphabetical order. Starting off with Alabama. All right, they've got Jalen Milroe back. Nick Saban is gone. Lost a lot of talent to the transfer portal with that happening. You bring in Kalen DeBoer from Washington. I'm intrigued how his offense is going to mesh with Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe, I'm a big fan. I think he's one of, if not the best players in college football. He's really talented. I know he might not have the best arm as a quarterback, but talent-wise, player-wise, give me Jalen Milroe every day. All right, but Alabama, I'll throw them in contender status. I don't think they're quite the favorites right now. Again, I need to see how Jalen Milroe meshes with Kalen DeBoer's offense. Now, if they look stellar in week 1, I might instantly bump them up to favorite status. But as of right now, I've got them as a contender. All right, next we've got Arkansas. Bringing back Bobby Petrino. Now, this is probably their head coach's last year in Arkansas. It's been really bad. But Bobby Petrino, as the OC, could make things a little interesting. They brought some interesting stuff in the transfer portal. But the SEC is so tough, I think it's just better luck next year for them. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if they upset a team or two, but as of right now, I got to throw them in here. All right, next up we've got Auburn. Hugh Freeze. All right, solid job, I guess, year 1 under Auburn. Almost beat Arkansas. Not the best record, but he's slowly getting an influx of talent at Auburn. But similar as Arkansas, I think they could upset some teams, but as of right now, I got to throw them in better luck next year because he's just not quite there yet, talent-wise, especially in the SEC. All right, next we've got Florida. All right, similar here. I think their head coach is on the hot seat, no doubt. Billy Napier is kind of in deep water here. He's added some talent in the transfer portal, but again, in the SEC with their schedule, I got to throw them in better luck next year. I don't think they're going to be very effective this year. I don't think Billy Napier makes it out of this year. So by this time next year, I think Jamie Chadwell of Liberty will be the head coach of Florida. But with these, I was looking at a lot of these better luck next year teams trying to find one that had an easy schedule that could maybe bump up, if they just win an extra game, for example, but I just couldn't find it. All right, next we've got Georgia. Okay, so this is a little complicated here. All right, we're going to go ahead and get into this. Now, I think if you ask me who's the best team in the ACC, it'd be Georgia. All right, they're definitely the favorite, I think. But with that being said, they do lose a lot of talent. They've got Carson Beck back, but he loses Lab McConkey, loses Brock Bowers. All right, so you lose some talent here, similar to another team we'll talk about later. Again, I think they are the best team in the SEC, but they play such a tough schedule. I don't see how they make it through it unscathed. Now, if they somehow go undefeated, they'll be the favorite, but they play Clemson in the non-con, and they play, like I said, such a brutal schedule during the SEC play that I think they're going to lose a game or two, and I still think, if they get to the playoff and play those teams again, if they did drop one, I still would pick Georgia over them. But I don't see how Georgia makes it through that without a loss or two because they play such a tough schedule. So I'm going to throw them in contender status. Now, again, they are, in my opinion, the favorite to make it, but if they drop a game or two somehow from that tough schedule, one of those teams is going to be in the SEC championship. It's not going to be Georgia. But again, I think they are the best team, but I don't see them quite as a contender right now. All right, Kentucky. All right, so this is one of the teams that I was looking to see their schedule. Do they have a kind of easier schedule? Could they somehow be a sneaky contender? But unfortunately for Kentucky, Mark Stoops, they're going to have to go in better luck next year. All right. We know the drama with Kentucky. All right, Mark Stoops kind of took the A&M job for an hour and then backed out. And so ends up back at Kentucky. After they won that game against Louisville, he decided to run it back there. they've got a lot of question marks. They lose some stuff. They've got, who is it, Vandergrift from Georgia. I think Georgia's backup quarterback is going to be Kentucky's starting quarterback most likely. Now, they did bring in some other transfer quarterbacks from Rutgers. They brought in their quarterback, Wimsett. So I don't know how that'll exactly play out, but Kentucky, probably better luck next year. All right, next we've got LSU. All right, they lose a ton of round one talent. All right, Daniels, to state the obvious, the Heisman candidate last year, Daniels. They lose Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. They lose a lot of talent. But they have done a good job in the transfer portal. Reports are Garrett Nussmeier looks really good at quarterback. LSU, I don't think is quite as good as a lot of these teams, but I'm going to have to throw them in contender status. As of right now, I've got them losing 2 games. But if they somehow pull out one of those, all right, other than that, I don't see them losing any games. If they somehow pull out one of those 2 losses I've got right now, they could instantly be in the SEC championship. All right, next we've got Mississippi State. This is another team I'm going to throw in better luck next year. Year 1 under Jeff Lebby. We'll see how it goes. But with the talent they have, it's not much in the SEC, so I don't really see them making much of a run there. All right, next we've got Missouri. Really good year last year, under Eli Drinkwitz. All right, Brady Cook is back. You've got Luther Burden back at receiver. Cody Schrader, their kind of bell cow running back, is gone, but they bring in Marcus Carroll from Georgia State. Top 10 running back in the country last year. I think he's going to be a force at Missouri. I got to throw them in contender status. Now, they have a favorable schedule, and I think that's going to help them out here. But these are one of the teams, for example, every one of these teams so far, besides maybe LSU, I have with 1 loss. So I don't know how exactly that tiebreaker is going to end up playing out, but I think all of them are going to be in the playoff minus LSU. All right, next we've got Oklahoma. All right, they lose Dillon Gabriel. You've got Brent Venables back at head coach, back again. You've got Jackson Arnold coming in as the next quarterback. How's he going to do? Brent Venables hasn't had much success when Dillon Gabriel's been gone. When he was injured, for example, they weren't very good. So I know a lot of people have Oklahoma in their top 20s, top 25s, but I got to throw them in better luck next year. I don't think it's going to be very good. I'm not sold on Brent Venables as a head coach. Like I said, when Dillon Gabriel has been out injury-wise, they've absolutely sucked. And moving to the SEC, it's not going to get any easier. So I don't see them improving, and I really don't see them being much of a factor in the SEC coming over from the Big 12. All right, next we've got Ole Miss. All right, a team making a lot of waves. I've seen them in a lot of people's top 5s. Loaded up in the transfer portal. You've got Jackson Dart back at quarterback under Lane Kiffin. Now they lose Quinshon Judkins to Ohio State. Can that be replaced at running back? Can his, the numbers he put up, can you replicate that with somebody else or by committee? We're going to find out. Ole Miss, I think, is super talented, and they have a good schedule. I'm going to put them in contender status. Now, are they as good as Alabama or Georgia? I don't know yet. We're going to find out, though, pretty soon, and I think they're definitely a contender. Next up, we've got South Carolina. We're just loading up this better luck next year category right now. If you couldn't do it with the talent they've had the past couple years, with Spencer Rattler at quarterback, how are they going to do it now? I think Shane Beamer's kind of on borrowed time here. I don't think he lasts too much longer at South Carolina. But then again, what are the expectations at South Carolina? I don't know. All right, next we got Tennessee, Josh Heupel. All right, kind of a disappointing year last year. Joe Milton at quarterback last year. You got Nico coming in as your next quarterback. Reports are he's looking really good. They have a favorable schedule as well. I'm going to throw them in so you're telling me there's a chance. I don't think they're quite as good as the teams above them. But if they win a game or two that they're not supposed to win, they could instantly bump up into contender status. And if they sneak one of those games out, they might get sneak into the college football playoff somehow. I've got them in my preseason top 25 right now, but I don't think they're quite a contender. All right, next we've got Texas A&M. All right, Jimbo Fisher is gone. They bring in Mike Elko from Duke. I'm a big fan of Mike Elko. He did some really good things at Duke. But unfortunately, similar to some of these other teams, year 1, I don't think you're going to have the talent to compete just yet, so I'm going to throw them better luck next year as well. The SEC is just too talented, too top-loaded for me. I don't think A&M is going to be a contender. They might upset one of those teams or two, but contender-wise, it's not happening. All right, next we've got Texas. All right, Texas. Now, we're going to see what they're made of week 1. All right, against Michigan. They play Michigan in the non-con. Similar to Georgia, you've got your quarterback back, but you lose a lot of the talent around him. So how is that going to work out? I'm still not sold on Steve Sarkisian as a head coach. I realize they were really good last year, but he makes some questionable in-game decisions that I really don't know about it. I'm going to throw them in contender status. I think they are definitely a contender. Should at most probably have 1 or 2 losses, but again, the SEC is just so loaded. Who's going to come out of this contender group? I don't know. All right, and last but not least here, we've got Vanderbilt. Yeah, let's go ahead and throw them better luck next year. They're the bottom barrel of the SEC. Apologies in advance. Now, looking at the entire tier list here, the contenders, I think LSU is definitely in last. Georgia and Texas I have as, I would say, are the favorites of the contenders right now. But again, I don't think any of these teams are going undefeated in SEC play. So I really can't put one of them as the favorite. If I had to pick 2, like I said, it'd be Georgia and Texas. The order I would probably have those contenders in is Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU. That's probably the ranking I would go. But again, I don't see any of them going undefeated. They're all going to have a loss or 2. And they don't all play each other. So I don't know how exactly that tiebreaker is going to play out. I don't know who will end up being in the SEC championship. I think every one of them but LSU makes the college football playoff. But LSU is similar to Tennessee. But LSU I had to put in contender because they have such a favorable schedule. But Tennessee, so you're telling me there's a chance. Again, if they pull out a game or 2 they're not supposed to, they could easily bump up into contender status. Better luck next year. As far as teams that somehow could be, so you're telling me there's a chance, I would probably say, Oklahoma, A&M. I could be wrong on them. All right, Oklahoma I could be wrong on. Jackson Arnold could shock me. But as of right now, I'm not sold. A&M, Mike Elko is a good coach. Can he somehow pull out some games? I think it's possible. And then those first 4, Kentucky, Florida, Auburn, and Arkansas, I think are all talented, but not quite as good as the teams above them. But those are my tier list power rankings for the SEC. Again, I don't think there's a quite clear favorite in this conference. I think there's a lot of contenders, though, that are going to end up making for an interesting season. But let me know your tier list. Who are the favorites in your mind? Let me know your power rankings. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video. And most importantly, subscribe.